I saw the video and it's awful. You have armed security behind a barricaded door with politicians, arms drawn, and Ashley, jumping through an open window with a backpack. Lord knows what's in it, and it's just, you have to question what was the long-term plan with that, and how far do they think it's going to go before something tragic happens? But
that's where QAnon came in. QAnon targeted religious people and military people to convince them that they were really acting at the behest and the behalf of insiders. So when they're all there, because my first thought was, why did they? And I realized, of course, it's QAnon, and then started figuring out it was. They'd been saying this on the 8kun boards now for weeks, which will raise questions about the FBI, which we'll get to, and raise questions about what intelligence briefers were failing to tell the president about, which we'll also get to. Maybe reasons they may want to be careful about where they go in terms of the president or other people. But the nature of it is, she thinks she's part of a military operation, that this is part of a secret operation that the white hats want her to do, take over the House and the Senate, because this way they can seize the bad actors and the white hats can finally win, and the criminals and the cartel operators and the Chi-Com spies will be caught up in that. She's just being a citizen soldier, a digital soldier. And QAnon had conditioned people to start thinking this way, slowly and steadily. Brilliant psyop, a psyop that needs to be studied. And I, for one, am still not convinced that it has no U.S. governmental ties. And the reason for that, aside from the sophistication of the QAnon as a psyop, I mean, it suckered millions of people. It suckered people with no history of criminal activity to do something completely self-destructive, to the degree, for one person, it led to their death.
But, so I will say this whole conversation takes place with a certain amount of, I'm tempted to say trepidation, but let's just call it fear. There's a certain amount of fear that what is taking place on the major platforms is coming for us, and that the important points that we are trying to make will not only be lost, but that our attempting to make them may hasten what will likely come for us. Not for the first time, so we will come back to this. But in any case, I want to somehow make this point, and to the extent that Dark Horse might disappear from this platform, I want you to remember that I made it. Okay? And the point is, you have a lot of people responding to a garbagey understanding of what is taking place, right? You have the QAnon right, which has a misunderstanding about where we are. Not that I don't know almost anything about the detail of the content of QAnon, but it's an overly packaged view of what has gone wrong. It has filled a vacuum of information about what really runs society. This is, again, the counterpart of the confused understanding over on the BLM, Antifa, Black Bloc left, right? Which has the sense that our civilization is so evil and so far above others with respect to how much harm it has done, that the only response to it is to tear down its structures, right? That cannot possibly make things worse and will inevitably make things better. That is an equally confused understanding of where we are. And so you cannot have a society in which every individual gets to decide for themselves when you have reached a moment that you are obligated to rebel against the structures and tear them down, right? You can't have everybody waking up each morning and deciding whether they're in a Unabomber mood or not, right? So to the extent that the founders of the country rebelled against a tyrannical governance structure, they were very clear-headed on why they were doing it, and they were united, and it was clearly justified. And what we have here is a small insurrection into the Capitol that is somehow the fringe, I mean, it's almost physically the fringe of this much larger protest that was at the Capitol, which is itself the fringe of the conservative movement, right? So anyway, you've got these things, it's like a physical gradient, and you've got people who are, wearing the Viking helmets and carrying the Confederate flags, breaching the Capitol. That's obviously completely unacceptable. one did not see a lot of firearms in this circumstance. So what you have is an insurrection, an egregious violation of the law, one that is not justified by our circumstances, but done in a way that is clearly intended to be, in some sense, symbolic, right? So I'm not justifying it, but what I'm saying is that an honest broker would have to parse all of this nuance, and that unfortunately, what we are getting, this idea that we can decide who's right enough to listen to, that we can take anybody who is engaging any idea that has been formally dismissed and toss them off platforms and things, is going to result in the worsening of the problem that caused the rioting this summer and the worsening of the problem that caused the breach of the Capitol, which is people don't have good information to go on. Why don't they have good information to go on? Lots of different reasons, including mundane algorithm stuff. But the point is, this is what happens in the vacuum of analysis, is you get this kind of confusion. You get QAnon confusion on the one side and Antifa confusion on the other side. And if you want this not to characterize the way we are going forward, the thing to do is not to try to police speech online. That's a perfectly insane response to this. It's going to make it worse. The right thing to do is to let those of us who know how to engage these difficult questions responsibly do it. Will we make errors? Of course, but that's the nature of civilization.